Well, the Peterborough chapter of People First, a group that speaks up for the rights, dignity, and value of people living with intellectual disabilities, hosted its third annual regional conference today. More than 100 people from across the province came to the event, which featured various workshops and keynote speakers. This year's theme, Believe in Yourself, It's All Possible, focused on building self-esteem and leadership skills.
We believe that people can stand up and be an adult, they can make their own decisions, they can take charge of their life, and they can do those things like everybody else. They can lead workshops, they can volunteer, they can work, they can do what everybody else does, and they're equal.
I feel absolutely wonderful to be a part of People First. I first got involved in 2002, and I've been more proud and more feeling top-notch of being part of this organization.
In our society, if someone commits a crime, they hurt another person, we put them into prison because they're found guilty of a crime, right? One of the unfortunate things that's still going on in our community, if you're born with a disability, it's like you have a crime, because the places that you go and live, sometimes they're not like where other people go and live, in apartments and homes. And although we closed the big institutions like Smith Falls, there's still a lot of places that aren't so great to live in. That's someone I've known for a long time. That's Carolyn. And that picture is where she used to live, and that's pretty much her whole room. It was a tiny little room with a little metal bed, and not a very good life. And Carolyn is an amazing person, but when she first went to live there in a place, it's called the Domiciliary Hostel, which is another word for an enormous group home, which is really what it was. There's about 30 people living there. And her enjoyment of life went down, 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 down. She went from being an artist out in the community, enjoying herself, and then suddenly she didn't want to come out. She stopped drawing, she stopped painting, and pretty much just spent all her time eating and sleeping, because it was a really depressing place to be. So let's go to the next one. And we're really, really happy that we're able to create some affordable supported housing, and that's Carolyn now with friends, and she lives in a condominium apartment. Awesome! It's something I'm like the most happiest about in my whole life. Maybe meeting my wife, but really, really, really excited about what Carolyn's life is like now. She's back to drawing. She's had art shows recently. She's been a speaker in the Parliamentary Press Gallery with the Canadian Association for Community Living, talking about what it's like to live in quality housing instead of a place where she was living. So that's the live part of LiveWorkPlay and work. So we have two people here that are smiling. One, I'm not so sure it's a real smile, because it's not really a workplace. That's a sheltered workshop, and the person that's working there is not being paid minimum wage, and they don't really have an opportunity to advance in their job. Versus Amanda here, who I've known for 20 years, who's holding a real paycheck from a real workplace. That's where Amanda works, and that's where she makes friends and peers and colleagues, and has the respect of the community as a contributing member of the workforce. And that's what we believe work's all about. There's a place for everybody to work in the community, and even though it's difficult, we have to do our best to make that happen. So that's one of the things when I talk about, it's not a person with a disability that did something wrong because they can't get a job. It's because our community yet doesn't understand, including businesses and employers, how do you welcome everybody, and there's a place for everybody in the workplace. And more we're finding employers are ready to listen to that if we explain it in the right way. Okay, next, Mary. So the last word, the play part of LiveWorkPlay, it covers a lot of things that are more than play, actually. It's about citizenship, it's about relationships, about friendships, education, sports, leisure. So just a quick tour of what these pictures represent. We don't actually work with Shane, but that was in the news recently because that's two people who happen to have intellectual disability who've been married for a long time. And the fact that that's a news story tells us we still have a lot of work to do. It shouldn't be a big deal that a couple people with disabilities are married, right? But it still is, because it doesn't happen that often. And people are not having relationships in the same way. So we have to keep developing that, and people have the right to have love in their life and have a spouse and get married and have a good life and have kids if they want, like Shane had. In the middle, that's actually, don't work with Marie. Marie's a friend of my wife's. Marie has an intellectual disability, and she had a dream of being an early childhood educator, so working in an official daycare. And she was told by a number of agencies that you will not be able to do that. That is impossible for you. She went and worked with children for a couple of years in a paid job, and then she went back, and then they said, okay, you can come in the ECE program. She did it for 2 years, she graduated, and she's now working for an early childhood education program in Ottawa. And they care about you. There's a lot of people in different communities. They're isolated. They might not have family, and they might not be connected with something like People First or community living, and they're really very alone. And that's when you're most likely to suffer abuse from people. Okay, next. So yeah. Well, our friend Simon Cowell is absolutely right. That totally stinks. Our community has to do a lot better. So let's talk about that. I just find it very interesting how the mom, she's sort of self-aware because she says, oh, subconsciously, sometimes, we just don't let them grow. Subconsciously, you're in their bed! Get out of bed! So it's a really great, it's a great movie. It's only an hour, and it's done as a documentary. Go to the next slide. Right there. So one of the words that can be used to hurt you the most is the word vulnerable or vulnerability. And this is, does everyone know Dave Hinsberger? Who knows Dave? Yeah, lots of people. Let's hear it for Dave. Wow. If they're vulnerable, we never doubt it's because their environment is wrong, right? It's because there's pollution or we're paving over their habitat. And that it's never the fault of the animals. We always know other human beings that are taking away their habitat. Interesting thing, with people with disability, we blame the person with a disability. With animals, we accept that the community is the problem. So guess what? It's the same issue. People with disabilities that are experiencing barriers, it's because the community is creating the barriers. Let's go to the next. And be bridge builders and help the community welcome me appropriately. So let's go to the next. So I see a lot of that going on. I was visiting, I was on the Community Living Peterborough website and checking out what's going on there. And the way that People First and Community Living is partnering and trying to get that message out. And so we're following that model in Ottawa, and this is just a little video of, here, Jennifer, give us a wave down here. This is Jennifer. So Jennifer's secretary-treasurer, and there's Emily, and who's our vice president, and Jose was our president. They weren't available, and we got invited to go on television just to explain about how the two organizations are working together. So this is just a little clip of how we're doing that.
We'd like to host an event so we can invite people like you to come to Ottawa and spend time with us.
So, I just want to wrap up by congratulating Community Living Peterborough and People First to Peterborough for their partnership and pulling off these amazing conferences, because I can tell you last year's conference and our participation there really strongly influenced what happened in Ottawa, and really we're using it as what you're doing as a guide for how we want to see things moving in Ottawa. So thank you for everything that you've been doing.